So welcome everyone, and thank you for your patience this morning. My name is Elisa Sladzinska, and I work for the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, BACP. Welcome to the BACP Business Education Workshop Webinar Series. We have adapted our regular business education workshops at City Hall into these webinars until further notice. On behalf of our Commissioner, Rosa Ascarino, I want to inform you that business licenses can be processed online where applicable by visiting chicagobusinessdirect.org. And just note that any emails or websites I mentioned will be posted in the chat box, so you'll be able to reference them there. If you are part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. If you want to learn about the program, please visit chicago.gov/business education. To help guide your business and employees during Chicago's reopening process, please visit chicago.gov/reopening. Also, BACP and the City of Chicago's Office of Emergency Management and Communications created Shy Biz Emergency Alerts. You can opt in to receive targeted emergency alerts for the business community. If you are interested, please visit chicago.gov/Shy Biz Alerts. And once again, all those websites will be posted in the chat box, so you'll be able to reference them there. And we encourage attendees to ask questions in the chat box. A few points in the presentation will ask for attendee participation, and then we will also have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And today's webinar will be Coronavation, a simple approach to pivoting or creating new revenue streams for your business. It will be presented by Jason Johnson, Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Chicago Urban League. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
No, we're having camera issues, and I actually got dressed for this presentation. So but we can still make it do what it do. Without the camera. Jason Johnson. I'm the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Chicago Urban League, and I'm excited to share this presentation on a term that I call Coronavation. So, as you all know, as the pandemic progressed, a lot of businesses were negatively impacted. Their business models were disrupted. It was really hard for them to figure out ways to generate revenue. So, about, I think, May of last year, I developed this process to help business owners figure out, okay, what they can do during the pandemic to generate additional revenue streams and to kind of pivot, if you will. I know pivoting has been a term that a lot of people have been using over the past year, but when you talk to people, a lot of people don't really know where to start as far as how to go about that process. So it's my hope today that this gives you all a process, an approach to dealing with pivoting. And then in some instances, maybe the pandemic has created new business opportunities for you, being able to identify those as well. So this is also, the things that you're going to learn today can also be used to just create additional revenue streams for your business, regardless of how the pandemic has impacted it. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Jason, I think you mute yourself. If you could just unmute.
Yes, I did accidentally unmute myself. I don't know how that happened. But pretty much the objective of this workshop is simple. You're going to learn a simple process for quickly generating pivot ideas for business resiliency during the COVID-19 pandemic and just overall in general. So a little bit about myself. I'm the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Chicago Urban League. I'm a professor at Illinois Institute of Technology. I teach industrial organizational psychology there. I'm a contributor for Forbes, and then I also am finishing a doctorate in organizational leadership at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. So that's just a little bit of additional information about my background. So without further ado, let's get into the workshop. So could you all just I like to be interactive. So there will be some I'll have some questions for you guys throughout the workshop that you can respond to in the chat. So my first question is, how has the pandemic disrupted your business? Feel free to share in the chat all of the ways that the pandemic has negatively impacted your business. Anybody want to share in the chat? One person said not negatively, which is good. So you look at it as an opportunity for growth. We're going to talk about that side of the coin as well, Carol. Any other people want to share? Halted expansion. All right. Somebody else said they created a business opportunity from it. All right. So I'm hearing a combination of, no more in-person events. I run a dog walking company, everyone working from home, so it slowed down your business hardcore. All right. So what we're seeing is a combination of, in the chat so far, is a combination of some people have found some opportunities, and then some people have, had some challenges. And this workshop is for both of those types of people in those situations. It's for those individuals looking for opportunities that's been created by the pandemic, but it's also to help you, address some of your business model disruption that you may have experienced during the pandemic. So pretty much we can just go ahead and move on from this question, but unless a couple people want to just chime in particular, has the pandemic created new opportunities for your business? And if so, how so? I know a couple people mentioned there's been some new opportunities. Anybody else identified some new opportunities created by the pandemic for their business, or just new ventures potentially as well? All right, got one person, great opportunity since the pandemic started. We started catering, delivering home meals after the pandemic. Deep cleaning. So someone else said they decided to start selling t-shirts and mugs. So we already got a lot of coronavators in the audience. So that's good to hear. So pretty much what we want to discuss today is how to exploit those new opportunities created for your business. So one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make when it comes to pivoting or creating new offerings is that they view their business as a discrete, indivisible entity that cannot be broken down into further component parts. So they just look at their business as a static entity. I'm a caterer, and all we do is cater. I'm a bakery, and all I can do is bakery things. I'm a consultant, and all I can do is consulting things, right? As far as my business. But in reality, in order to successfully pivot or to create a new venture, viewing your business as a configuration of building blocks that can be configured to solve new problems and create new value is imperative. So instead of looking at your business as a static entity, you have to look at it almost like Legos. And those Legos can be reconfigured to create new value. So when we purchase Legos, right? Usually with the Legos, it says this is a kit to build a bulldozer, or this is a kit to build a house. However, we all know, our kids, they take those blocks and they build all type of other things with it, right? So in addition to building that bulldozer, you can take those same bricks that the intention was to build a bulldozer with and build a car with those. You could take that same, set that was meant to build a house and build an apartment building or a garage or, a dinosaur, right? So pretty much, if we're able to look at our business from a perspective of being a set of building blocks that can be reconfigured, then it puts us in a good position to be able to pivot and to create new offerings within our business. So what are the building blocks of a business? It's capital, right? So a lot of times people think about capital only in financial terms, but capital comes in a variety of different forms. Financial capital isn't the only form of capital, but it's the one that most people think of when they think about the term capital. So pretty much there's 3 general forms of capital, though there's other forms of capital people discuss, like innovation capital, cultural capital. There's a variety of different capital sources, but the 3 forms that we're going to talk about today, and which I think are most imperative to entrepreneurship, is obviously financial capital, knowledge capital, or what some people call human capital, and then social capital. So when you look at your business is a configuration of financial capital, knowledge capital, and social capital, and it's configured in a way to create value for a customer and to generate revenue for yourself. So what are these 3 forms of? Can everybody hear me? All right. So someone said, okay, they say we can hear me.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So let's go into the 3 different forms of capital. So with financial capital, and these lists are by no means exhaustive. There's a variety of different, forms for each capital. So some examples of financial capital would be cash, obviously, assets, property, but not just like property in terms of real estate, but all of the things that you own, vehicles, computers, all of those different things. All of your property that you own can be considered financial capital. Credit is a form of financial capital, and investments. So those are just some examples of the financial capital that you can use to build your business or to build new offerings or to pivot. Then there's your knowledge capital. So your knowledge capital is your business team's knowledge, skills, abilities, and then other factors such as personality, patents, intellectual property, trade secrets. All of this constitutes your knowledge capital. So pretty much your knowledge capital is basically what you know and what you're able to do, physically and intellectually. A lot of people refer to this as human capital, but the reason I prefer to refer to it as knowledge capital is because in order to do physical things, you have to have the knowledge on how to do them. And then also on top of that, it allows us to kind of account for things such as patents and intellectual property and trademarks and trade secrets and frameworks, all of those things that are knowledge products that you're able to use to be able to build your business. And then last but not least is social capital. And your social capital is your professional network, your personal network, your personal status. For example, being a minority business owner or a woman or a women-owned business, your social media following, your personal brand, awards and recognition, press, all of those that constitute your social capital. So pretty much in order to utilize capital, we have to acquire capital, right? So pretty much, these are the two primary capital acquisition strategies, which are ownership or purchasing and leveraging. So I'm gonna use an example that's really relevant right now to explain the difference between ownership and leverage. So as you guys know, it's been snowing like crazy outside. We probably had like 25 inches combined snow this year, if not. I mean, I'm sure anybody who's following or lives here knows it's just been a challenge. So pretty much, me and my wife, we own 2 shovels. So pretty much, using our shovels, we've went out and we, shoveled out our driveway. We shoveled out our backyard. We have a really big backyard with a really long pathway, which is a pain in the butt. In the winter, it's great in the summer, but it's terrible in the winter. So the 2 of us went out and we, shoveled, our driveway, our backyard, our, front porch, everything and all of that. Probably took us about 45 minutes together and a lot of back pain, right? But we own those shovels, so we utilize what we own. But let's say we got smarter, right? Let's say I reached out to a neighbor of mine who I know has a snowblower, and I say, hey, can I use your snowblower to empty to clean my driveway? And he says, sure, right? So now I utilize the snowblower. I go, and the job that took us 45 minutes maybe takes me 10 to 15 minutes, right? And then he says, hey, just buy me a bottle of scotch and we even, right? And then let's say we even formed an agreement where whenever it snows, I'm able to utilize, his snowblower, and then I give him a bottle of scotch, or, he just does it out of the kindness of his heart or whatever. That's an example of leverage. And oftentimes a lot of business owners are so focused on what they own, they think that their ability to access things is only based on what they currently own, when in reality, leverage is available, and leverage can do a great deal to grow and to accelerate your business. Leverage can be utilized to acquire capital in order to pivot. Leverage can be used to acquire capital in order to launch a new revenue stream. So pretty much one of the things that I see is that enough people aren't using leverage strategies to acquire the capital that they need in order to run their business, to pivot their business, and to create new offerings. So there's about 12 to 14 leverage strategies, and I could do a whole workshop on just leverage by itself and the power of leverage. And maybe if the city invites me, I will. But pretty much some of the more popular forms of leverage are borrowing. So borrowing is one that people don't recognize, they utilize, especially when it comes to financial capital. Borrowing is one of the most powerful leverage strategies that we utilize for financial capital. But we could also use it for other forms of capital as well, right? And I think borrowing is one that that is utilized a lot to acquire financial capital, but isn't utilized a lot in order to acquire other forms of capital. But then another one is bartering. Bartering is another one that enough business owners don't utilize. So bartering is basically acquiring capital by providing some of your own capital to another entrepreneur or another business. So for example, a couple years ago, I have a colleague who does photography, and he needed business coaching because he wanted to grow his business. He wanted to grow his business. So I thought about it like, hey, I need a photographer. I host networking events, not just for the Chicago Urban League, but for my personal, endeavors and things like that. And I'm like, hey, I'll provide you free business coaching. If you give me 3 hours of photography, I'll give you 3 hours of business coaching. And it was beneficial to both of us because he got the knowledge that he needed to grow his business. But then I was able to get photography for my networking events. Me and my wife had a baby shower. He shot the baby shower and a variety of other things. And it was pretty boss being able to walk into an event. It's like, Jay, you got a personal photographer? Yeah, I got a personal photographer. But I was able to acquire that through bartering and the thing is, if you're able to identify all of the capital that may be valuable to people that offer services that you need, then you can easily develop a bartering strategy to acquire the capital that you need. So one of the things you might want to do is just, and I'm gonna ask you guys to do it a little bit in this workshop, is to brain dump all of your capital. And then from there, think about the services that you need, and then think about what capital that you possess or you can easily leverage that would be valuable to those individuals who will have that resource or that service that you need, and develop an agreement. Yeah, an investment is another form of leverage also. I mean, pretty much borrow, investment, both of those are, one and the same. Investment's more of an empowerment term, so I do like the term invest, but investment is another form of leverage that people use as well. Equity, so the difference between borrowing and like equity can be considered, that's another form of leverage, as far as, okay, you're investing in my business. And then last but not least, I mean, obviously everybody knows what leasing is, and the powerful thing about leasing is that you don't have to, a lot of people, there's a lot of benefits to ownership, but there's a lot of downfall to ownership. So I have a colleague who did a series of Airbnbs in another market, and he leased all of the properties that he used for Airbnb. He didn't own anything. So what he was able to do is tell the landlords, hey, and this is some game that people could probably go use. If I can guarantee you 25% additional monthly rent revenue than you would be getting if you just rent it to the general market. So he was able to go to these different landlords, get these agreements, and then was able to run an Airbnb business using these different apartments that he was renting throughout the city. And the great thing about that is when COVID-19 happened, it was easier for him to get out some of those leases. So he was either able to negotiate his way out of those leases, or he was able to, or if he wasn't able to negotiate out the lease, then at the very least, once the lease was up, he was able to get out of that deal. Otherwise, if you own the property and if you buy the property specifically for Airbnb purposes, and the people stop coming in, you still got to pay that mortgage. And it's kind of hard to get out. It's a lot harder to get out of a mortgage than it is to get out of a lease. So that's another example of, leverage that could be utilized to pretty much, acquire capital that you need. And then the last but not least, this is another one that I love to utilize, and this is really particularly useful for acquiring knowledge capital. It's called ham and egg. So basically what a ham and egg leverage strategy is where you take two resources that you currently don't have possession of, and you leverage them against one another to get both of them. So for example, let's say I'm launching a technology company, and Mary's a great, person that I think would be a great CTO, and Bob is an amazing person that I think should be my chief marketing officer. I don't have neither one of them, and both of them got options. So how do I get both of them on board? I go to Mary and I say, hey, Mary, we're building an amazing team for this startup. I'm in the final processes of bringing Bob on as my chief marketing officer. She knows of Bob, but she doesn't, know him personally, but she's always wanted the opportunity to work with Bob. So she's like, oh, you're bringing Bob on board? I'm a join, right? So then I go to Bob and I say, hey, we're building an amazing team. I got Mary, coming on board as my CTO, and Bob, again, they don't know one another, but they know each other's work and they respect one another. So Bob's like, you're bringing Mary on? This thing is going to blow. She can build anything. I'm on, right? So now I just acquired both of them before getting either one of them signed on. I literally leveraged them against one another in order to acquire both of them. And there's a variety of different settings in which you can use, the ham and egg approach to leverage, capital that you currently don't have against one another to acquire that capital. So those are just a few examples of leverage. Any questions so far? Going to the next slide. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to all take about 2 minutes, because I know we don't have a limited amount of time. I wanted to do like breakout groups, but we can't do that in the webinar format. But take about 2 minutes to list some of your social, financial, and knowledge capital. Either capital that you currently own or capital that can be easily acquired through leverage. So I'm gonna give everybody about 2 minutes to kind of brain dump some of their capital, some of the building blocks of their business. And then we're going to, I'll have you guys share them, or feel free to share them in the chat, as you think of them. Anybody want to share some of their capital in the chat? All right, so as you guys are working on those, I'll move on to the next slide. So pretty much, now that we understand what capital is, now we can start reconfiguring our capital to create new revenue streams and, to pivot, all of those different things. So, now that we know what the building blocks of business are, we can start, looking at a process to reconfigure that capital into new offerings. So pretty much, we're going to start off, though, by revisiting the definition of entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of definitions of entrepreneurship, but like one of the ones that's kind of most popular and the one that I like the most is Harvard Business School's definition, which is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. So pretty much, I love that, without regard to resources currently controlled, because pretty much it emphasizes that resources can be acquired through leverage, right? But pretty much when you look at it from the standpoint of capital, my personal definition of entrepreneurship kind of slightly twists the Harvard Business School definition. So my definition is the utilization of capital to pursue opportunity without regard to capital sources currently controlled, right? So pretty much understanding that, that entrepreneurship is the utilization of capital to pursue an opportunity, and pretty much a capital can be acquired, to be able to pursue the opportunity, if you use the right leverage strategies and the right approach to acquire that capital. And pretty much this really drives home the whole concept of don't say I can't, say how can I. That's one of the main things I tell business owners, who I work with. Don't say I can't, say how can I. And that whole without regard to capital sources currently controlled, enters you into the creative process. When you say I can't, you stop thinking. When you say how can I, you start thinking of ways and strategies that you can utilize to acquire the capital that you need. So pretty much, now that we've revisited the definition of entrepreneurship, we're going to redefine or revisit the definition of a business. So a business is a configuration of knowledge, financial, and social capital designed to create value for customers and revenue for its owners. Again, a business is a configuration of knowledge, financial, and social capital designed to create value for customers and revenue for its owners. So pretty much, a business, when you're building a business, you're thinking about, okay, what financial capital do I have? What do I know? What do other people know that I could bring on board? What relationships do I have? And your business is a configuration of those three things, right? So when you have that realization, you have the realization that the capital within the business can be reconfigured to address new problems and create new value for customers. You can reconfigure that capital, and you can add on other capital to go along with the capital that you currently have in your business, and reconfigure it to address new problems and to create new value for customers. A perfect example of this was Amazon Web Services. So Amazon, as they were building the biggest e-commerce enterprise known to man, they had to acquire a lot of servers. They had to acquire a lot of IT knowledge. And then one day somebody in the organization looked up and said, hey, we have so many servers, we can never possibly use all of them. We can actually lease these out to people. So then literally they created Amazon Web Services. And now Amazon Web Services is the preeminent host for web apps and things like that. When you look at most platforms are being hosted on AWS. And all of that just came from them, looking at their existing capital, and reconfiguring it to create a new value for customers. And you can do that same thing as well. So in order to walk you through this process, I've developed a proprietary tool. I'll make sure that that everybody gets a copy of it. Once the presentation is over, I'll make sure that that Geraldine and the team sends it over to you all, everybody who registered for this webinar. But it's called the Coronavation Canvas. And it helps you quickly brainstorm new business models, during the pandemic. And it can be used just in general overall. So for those of you who are familiar with business model canvas, lean canvas, et cetera, it's basically the same thing. Canvas-based tools are tools that allow you to iterate, to come up with new ideas, to brainstorm, to model, in a really rapid process, by being one-pagers. So this is the Coronavation Canvas. So as you see, there's 4 sections, and there's a couple components within each section, and we're going to discuss what each of those are. So pretty much there's 4 sections. As I stated, there's the pre-COVID section, there's the disruptions and new problems created by COVID section, there's capital, and then the new opportunities and new offerings section. So pretty much the pre-COVID-19 section basically asks, what problem did you solve for customers prior to COVID? And what was the offering that you used to solve the customer problem? So basically, this is how your business was prior to COVID. All you're outlining is what was your customer's problem and what was your offering to address that problem. Basically, it's the state of your business prior to the pandemic. So then we want to look at disruptions and new problems. So number 1, what new problems did the pandemic create for your customers, right? So for those of you who saw opportunities, you probably saw opportunities because you identified new problems that customers were having. One of the pioneers of what I call Coronavation was DJ D Nice. He basically was like, everybody's stuck in the house, nobody can socialize, I'm going to create a virtual, house party. And then Versus came and all of these other solutions. And none of these would have been viable prior to COVID-19, because who's going to really sit in the house and just listen to a DJ when they can go to the club? Who's going to listen to 2 people battle when they can go to a DJ, when they can go to a club and hear DJs maybe do a battle, or they can go to the concert, right? So like the new problems that were created were addressed. Like Versus and Club Quarantine only existed because customers had new problems that they didn't have before the pandemic, right? So that's one of the things you want to look at. Then you want to look at disruptions to your business model. So, BM short for business model. How did the pandemic interfere with your ability to execute your business model? So pretty much, this is when the pivoting piece comes in, because if you understand how your business was disrupted, then you can start trying to identify ways around and interventions that you could use to kind of make up for some of that lost revenue that you that you lost. But then also it allows you to kind of understand your business in a way where maybe you can figure out ways to address the problems that were being caused. So pretty much just basically by understanding how you're being disrupted, you can come up with what workarounds and loopholes in order to address, the disruption. And then also, now once you've identified that particular problem that you want to, that customers are having that they didn't have prior to the pandemic, or you identify the disruptions to your business, then you can kind of start introducing your capital to address those issues. So, what knowledge capital do you own or can easily leverage to solve the new customer problem or to deal with the disruption? What social capital do you own or you can easily leverage to solve the problem or to deal with your business disruption? Or what financial capital do you own or can easily leverage to solve the customer problem or to address, the business disruption? And, pretty much a lot of, luckily, like organizations like the City of Chicago, BACP, the state of Illinois, Department of DCEO, was able to provide, financial capital to thousands of businesses to that they could leverage to solve some of their problems and things like that. But there's other things that businesses could do as far as on the knowledge and social capital side to leverage or to utilize to solve their problems as well. So then once you kind of identify that capital, you identify the problem, now you can start working on creating a new offering that, based on your reconfigured capital. So let's look at an example of what this looks like. And it's funny because somebody in the beginning was a caterer is actually doing one of these things, which is pretty cool. So pretty much the customer problem or delight is customers desire quality soul food catering, right? So this is pre-COVID. So their offering was a full menu of Southern style cuisine at an affordable price. So then COVID-19 happens. What were the new customer problems that were created? Social distancing has limited family gatherings. So a lot of the people that were utilizing them was using them for like family reunions, holiday parties, things like that. And then also on the corporate event side, social distancing limits events to less than 10 people or just outright has canceled them, depending on where we were in the phases. So those were the new problems that were created for customers. And then the disruptions to their existing business model due to the fact that people weren't able to have in-person events and people typically catered for in-person events. This ABC Catering, which is the name of this company, lost about 70% of their monthly revenue, right? So then they were like, okay, how can we deal with our business model disruption, and how can we create solutions to these new customer problems? So then they start doing the inventory of their capital. So the owner, she recognized, well, I have soul food cooking knowledge, which means that could be leveraged. And right now she was using it for catering, but that soul food cooking knowledge could be, repurposed or reconfigured in a variety of different ways. She has her son who's proficient with technology and social media, who's currently not involved with the business, but she's about to make him be involved with the business. Then you have then she has documented recipes and processes that she's created, because in order to have an effective catering business and scale, she had to do all of these things. So that's knowledge capital, intellectual property, trade secrets that she has. And then before she was a caterer, she was a teacher. So she has instructional knowledge as a former teacher. So that's some of her knowledge capital that she has. So then when she looks at some of her financial capital, her husband has 3 vans from his construction business. So they're, because they're a power couple, they both are entrepreneurs doing their thing, right? So he has 3 vans from his construction company that could be utilized. They have Zoom. Their home has a modern kitchen that looks good on camera, but then they also have amazing discounts they have discounts from their vendors. So due to the fact that they've done business with their vendors for such a long time, they now get discounts on, their food, products and things like that, that, could easily be marked up on. And then when you look at their social capital, they have a large customer base. They have 10,000 followers across social media platforms. They're recognized as one of the top restaurants in Chicago. And since they are one of the top restaurants in Chicago, they have tons of press. So, the owner of ABC Catering, she kind of thought about, okay, how could she reconfigure some of this capital into new offerings? So number one, to address the issue that customers were having about not being able to come together as a family, she created Family and Food, an online cooking class where family and friends can book it together and cook. So, if you're a family, you all come together, you're able to, register, and then you get her, guiding you through a recipe. So your whole family's able to come together and they're able to cook. and then have dinner together virtually. That was one offering she came up with. She came up with Sunday dinner, a virtual experience where everyone cooks together and live entertainment is provided once the food is complete and everyone eats. So due to the fact that she does have 10,000 followers across social media platforms and she's recognized as one of the top restaurants in Chicago, you know, she's able to reach out to entertainers who, you know, since they love her food so much, gladly provide some live entertainment, you know, while, during these events and during these experiences. And then last but not least, another idea she came up with was ABC Catering at Home, which is a weekly meal delivery service for busy families who don't have time to shop or cook. So you can either get pre-prepared meals where they prepare the meals for you themselves, or you can cook, or you could cook the meals yourself by getting the ingredients, kind of like Home Chef and some of those other ones. So due to the fact that she gets these deep discounts on vendors, you know, and then she has from vendors, and she has these documented recipes and processes, you know, it's easy for her to do these meal kits because she's getting all the ingredients cheaper and she's able to throw a markup, you know, on a margin on those. And then she has the recipes. So literally people can choose to cook at home, or they can get the pre-prepared meals. So those are some of the ideas that she came up with, you know, using the Coronavation Canvas. And this is just a fictional account, but this is an example of how you can utilize this tool in order to brainstorm new ideas quickly, using your knowledge, financial, and social capital. Any questions so far? Any comments? And I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of this. You know, I'll make sure that they mail this out to everybody who attended the webinar. And then I'm also working on creating an electronic version where you can just log in, create, you know, your canvases and save them, you know, as well. So once you come up with the offering, you have to test them, because what you don't want to do is just go off of assumptions and automatically assume that, okay, you know, I came up with this is going to work, right? So you want to take a lean approach to rolling out these offerings. You don't want to put this offering out unless you have an idea that is going to work, and you don't want to start significantly investing in it, because number one, capital short, your financial capital is short right now anyway because of the pandemic. You're not getting that many customers, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, pretty much, you don't want to make this a financial capital intensive process. You want to be able to test it, see if there's some traction, then kind of scale it using financial capital. So, and so I stated the importance of testing, that posted prevents overinvestment in an unproven offering, and it allows you to improve the offering based on customer buying behavior and feedback. So a good tool to use, another canvas, the Lean Canvas, which is one of the more popular canvas tools that's used to create new offerings, could be used to test out the offering. So why the Lean Canvas as opposed to the business model canvas, which is a lot of people are familiar with. The business model canvas is an illustration tool. So the purpose of a business model canvas is to outline what the business model looks like. The purpose of a Lean Canvas is to evaluate the viability of a business model. So that's the reason it's better to use the Lean Canvas as opposed to the business model canvas for your testing component. Because within the Lean Canvas, there's a component that says key metrics where you can set your key metrics and then test your offering's performance against those key metrics. So that's the reason I recommend using the Lean Canvas as opposed to the business model canvas, because the business model canvas is an illustration tool, like great for MBA classes. This is how their business model works and things like that. Whereas a Lean Canvas is a learning tool and it's actionable. So that's the reason I recommend the Lean Canvas for this process. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Lean Canvas, these are the 9 components. So what's the customer problem? So you literally take the problems that you identified from the Coronavation Canvas and literally throw those into the Lean Canvas, right? And then there's a component that says existing alternatives that basically outline what are people doing to solve the problem right now and that's not working, right? So then you want to come up with solutions, right, based on the problem. So the solution isn't your unique value proposition. This is a general description of what type of solution is needed. So, for example, with the meal delivery service, a solution would be meal delivery service. The unique value proposition would be ABC Catering at Home, right, which is their unique spin on delivery service. So in the solution section, you just list what type of generic solutions could be used to solve the particular problem. And then in unique value proposition, you outline specifically what your version of that, solution is, right? So then your key metrics is the metrics that you're going to use to test your offering, right? So the reason metrics are important are because they let you know the health or the performance of your offering. So if I go to the doctor and the doctor tells me your blood pressure is 119/74, I'm doing well health-wise with my blood pressure. If they say it's 140/93, that means I'm not doing as well, right? So metrics are important because they tell you the health of your offering, the health of your business, right? So you should be using metrics in your business overall, but when you're testing out your new offering, you want to use some metrics. So what are some common metrics? Sales numbers, so you may say, in order for me to scale this and really go, really invest in this, I want to get 50 sales within a 3-month period, right? And then if you hit those 50 sales, then you say, okay, maybe I expand this and I invest in this more. If you don't hit them, then you go back to the drawing board, right? Maybe you say the metric is I want to be able to get 10,000 in additional revenue for per month for when I implement this new offering, right? So you test it out for 3 months. You see if you're hitting that revenue mark. If you're not, you go back to the drawing board. You make some changes to it, and then you test it again, right? So then when we look at unfair advantages, this is typically your knowledge capital, things that can't be easily bought or copied. This is your patents. This is your intellectual property. This is your trade secrets, your frameworks, your years of experience, all those different things are your unfair advantages. If you got a significant financial capital already, that's an unfair advantage as well. So then your channels is your path to onboard customers or outboard them as well. So this is your social medias, your sales funnels, your sales cycle approach, all of those ways that you engage the customer, as far as awareness and then engaging them to secure the sale. You want to outline all those channels. Then you want to outline your customer segments. So who is the new customer, right? And so the new problems that you identify, it may be the same customer who has a new problem, or it may be a new customer who has a new problem. So you want to outline who those individuals are. And then last but not least, the money, right? You want to talk about your cost structure. How much is your offering going to cost you as far as internally? What are your cost of goods sold or, manufacturing costs, all of those things in order to deliver this offering or deliver the pivot, and then your revenue streams, which is basically, how your new offering or your pivot is going to make money for you. So basically, you outline everything in the lean canvas, and then you go out and test it. So what does this testing process look like? You identified the problem already, right? You've done your background research. Maybe you talked to a couple people who may fit the profile of the customer to see if they would be a good fit. So before you launch the offering or you start trying to experiment with it, you have some conversations with people that kind of understand, to kind of verify the problem. So when you do background research, you don't come to the person and say, hey, this is my offering. What do you think about it? I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about it? Then they're going to just say, they're not going to give you they're not going to give you real information. They're either going to tell you, oh, that's nice. Let me know when you launch it. And then when it's time to launch, you don't hear from them, right? Or because oftentimes when we share ideas, people are just trying to be nice. So instead of saying directly, what do you think about my offering? You try to verify whether or not the problem that you think they're having is actually the problem that they're having. So you have a conversation with them instead. Don't mention your offering. Just say, hey, I just want to have a conversation with you, just kind of understand your world, what's going on with you. And then you just ask them questions. So if you hypothesize, okay, I'm going to launch this home meal delivery service because people don't have time to cook, and they don't have time to whatever, you have a conversation with people who you think would fit the process. And then that also helps you protect you from people taking your idea, which really isn't a problem unless somebody has the resources to actually do it. But, for people who are afraid to kind of talk to potential customers, this kind of protects you from people taking your idea. So you just have a conversation with them. Yeah, it's hard for me to really cook now because I'm back to back on Zoom meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And if you talk to a couple people and they all saying that's the problem, then maybe this is an offering you want to explore, right? If they all say, oh, I have time to cook, I just, whatever. And everybody that you think would be potential customers are all saying the same thing, scrap it, think of something else, right? So then what you do is you create the offering using your Coronavation Canvas and then the Lean Canvas, right? You set those metrics, you conduct the experiment, you see how the offering performs against those metrics, and that's when you analyze the results. So when you analyze the results, if you hit those metrics, you can either say, hey, I'm going to invest fully into this because I think this has some traction, or you may say, I want to test this even more, and you may set more difficult metrics to see if it hits those, right? Because sometimes we might make the metrics too simple to acquire, right? So, or you may say, if you didn't hit your metrics, hey, it didn't hit the metrics that I thought it was going to hit. Let me go back to the drawing board and tweak this a little bit more, and then I'm going to, test it again. Or you may just say, or you might think maybe those metrics were too ambitious. Let me, see if I can at least hit this benchmark. So then you go through that process. If you recognize that you're not ready to fully invest or you haven't achieved product market fit, you kind of re-identify the problem, make sure that's actually a problem that people are having, do your research again, create the offering using the CC and the LC, conduct the experiment, and analyze it again. And you do this until you figure out product market fit, which is basically when your offering is consistently hitting the metrics and it's consistently and it's generating consistent revenue. So when you're creating the offering, you don't want to create it with all of the bells and whistles. You want to create what's called a minimally viable product, or MVP, where you're just testing the core offering, right? So let's say you're saying, okay, right now I've been baking scones and things like that. If I start, delivering cake, I can start generating more money, right? You don't want to create 14 flavors of cake. Just create the ones that people like red velvet and buttercream, and you just test it and see if people like that. And if they like that, then they'll probably like the other ones, right? So you don't want to invest. The key is, due to the fact that you have limited financial capital, you don't want to invest a whole lot of money and time in this process. You want to fail fast, as they say, or succeed fast. You want to identify the problem, do the research, conduct the experiment, test it, analyze it, and you either works or it doesn't. Maybe you run through a couple rounds, but you don't want to make this a difficult process, and you don't want to make this an expensive process. So that's pretty much the entire process of Coronavation. I'm glad to take any questions.
Hey, Jason, it's Elisa back here. Thank you so much for such a positive and innovative presentation. We see nothing but positive feedback in the comments, so thank you so much for sharing your insight with us.
I'm glad.
Yep. So like Jason mentioned, we are opening it up to questions. Please send your questions in the chat box, the same one you've been using during the presentation. All right, first question is, if you're a startup and don't have the years of experience, what would be your unfair advantage?
So if you're a startup and you don't have years of experience, your unfair advantage, what type of startup is this? Is this a idea? Is this like a tech idea, or it's it depends. So pretty much you may have a proprietary process. So you don't have the years of experience, but maybe you have a proprietary process that you've developed. That could be it. I mean, oftentimes people go into businesses. So typically when people go into business, a lot of times they're typically going into something they either been passionate about for years, or they've been in that industry for years when they launch a new business. So your unfair advantage, let's say you're launching a business in the industry you've already been in. You have years of experience already, even though your business hasn't been in business, even though your venture hasn't been in business for years, you already have that experience, right? Because that's the reason you're going to launch that business. Or if you have a passion, you've been baking for 20 years and you have this bomb cake that nobody else can duplicate, that's unfair advantage as well. So it's not just about how long your business has been in existence. Do you have intellectual property? Do you have years of industry experience? Do you have a natural talent at whatever you're launching, even if you don't have years of experience? So unfair advantage can come in a lot of different ways. And if you have a really innovative product or service that doesn't exist yet, being first to market is your unfair advantage as well. Now, sometimes people, it's an unfair advantage, but it also puts you at a liability because everybody gets the chance to learn from the mistakes that you make, and then they can come after and improve on it. But if you execute the right way, being first to market is also an unfair advantage. Hopefully that answered your question.
Okay, thank you. And once again, please use the chat box to ask your questions. Saw another one come in, 1 second. In regards to borrowing and investing, this person is asking, instead of framing it as I want to borrow, can you ask people to invest? Opportunity to invest versus I'm asking to borrow your money.
They're different strategies. Investing and borrowing is different strategies, right? So they're different leverage strategies. Borrowing typically is transactional, right? Borrowing is so pretty much, let me use your snowblower. Let me use your truck. Let me use your money if it's a bank, right? And I'll pay this interest, right? The bank isn't necessarily invested in your success only to the extent that you're able to pay back the loan, right? So borrowing is transactional, and in some instances, borrowing is the right tool. Investment in your business is like, for example, equity, right? Equity is like investment, right? Investment is relational, right? Because when you're investing in something, it's your intention to kind of be involved and be supportive. Whereas when you're borrowing, that's more transactional. Now, both of them are viable leverage strategies. It just depends on the situation and the circumstances. So yes, you can use the term investing, and as long as you're being transparent and you're accurate that this is actually investment, as far as their involvement, you being able to, because typically investment means when like a company invests in you, right? They're looking for a return, but then sometimes they also ask to get a board seat on your board and things like that. Borrowing is just debt-based borrowing. Hey, let me borrow this money. The only context of the relationship is you give me back more than what I did. But I mean, for semantics, you can use investment. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you for that clarification. And someone's asking, what are your thoughts on borrowing from or asking family to invest?
Typically, that's the way a lot of companies start, friend and family rounds. They call it the friend and family round. That's typically that's typically where they tell people to go. Now, in a lot of our Black and brown communities and some of our underserved communities, we don't have relatives who got like $20,000. Like, I didn't have no uncles with $20,000 to launch anything, and that's the case with a lot of our communities. So, I mean, typically when they have family who have that money, that's typically where a lot of people go. Like when people launch startups and launch firms and businesses and things like that, they typically go to their family if their family has the capital. So that's typically where you're supposed to go, typically when you're launching. And when you're launching something, that's typically where you should go if they're able. But now you also got to remember there's certain things that come with family. And every family member, even if they have the means, isn't the right individual to invest in your business. So you got to, so we all know our family members. We know there's certain ones that, you know, they have the means and they have the disposition. Oh, this would be a great person to, you know, to get to invest in this, right? Whereas you got some relatives where it's like, nah, I don't want to do business with them. And we all know who those individuals are, right? So you got to use your discretion in that regard. But I definitely encourage it if you have, you know, relatives and family that has the means.
And just a quick note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Chicago BACP. Next question is, in regards to testing, would you recommend an amount of free product testing to prove your idea? I've done this before and it hit my wallet quite hard.
I mean, the thing is, when you're doing free, you're not really testing the value, right? Because what you want to test is whether or not people vote for this with their dollar, right? So free, if you plan to charge for it, like giving it away for free isn't really testing it, because you want to test it under the actual conditions at which you're going to be putting this on the market. So you want people to pay for it.
Good.
And I see one. How will we get investors without? How can we get investors without giving up shares at today's value of the business, and instead in the future expected value? In other words, today we might only be investing 1,000, 50% of what I need to start with, a total need of 2,000, but the business in 5 years is worth 2 million. I would hate to give up 50% of the company at 100 when I know it's worth way more than that. I'm putting my time, energy, knowledge, and resources to build it. So there's no hard and fast answer to this. This is negotiation, right? So the thing is, when a new venture exists, it doesn't have really any defined value. What your value, so what you're talking about is valuation, right? So pretty much if you project, so let's say in this situation, you know, you think the business is worth, you know, is going to be worth 2 million, right? If the person is only investing 100,000 for 50% equity, then that's both of you guys agreeing that your business is only worth 200,000, right? So oftentimes the investment sets the amount for the business. So if you say your business is going to be worth 2 million, then pretty much the equity conversation should, you know, that 100,000 should reflect, you know, what you think the actual value is or going to be, right? And all of this is subjective at this point, right? I mean, like pretty much like, and that's the crazy thing about this. And one of the things I would recommend is you make sure that you have a great attorney who understands, you know, equity and investment and things like that, and a great CPA on your team who knows like the more of the nuances of this whole process. But just to answer that question in general, you know, it's a negotiation.
Good. Someone's just asking for contact information. So Jason, do you have a website, email, or phone number you would like to share with our attendees?
Pretty much my email, I can put it in the chat.
Okay.
Let me go to all presenters, all attendees.
Everyone.
Oh, so you said everyone. Let me see what it says. Everyone. Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is my email. And then LinkedIn, you can find me as Jason William Johnson. And then, like, literally, if you just type in Jason William Johnson, like, I pop up and you can find me, you know, and all you know, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on LinkedIn. You know, if you just type in my name, you know, I'm Googleable. I'm not saying that, you know, some people that Google me. I'm not saying it like that. I'm just saying it's
easily found. Perfect. No, thank you so much, Jason. I don't see any other questions coming in, but like I mentioned, Jason did just share his contact information. So if you guys think of anything in the future, please feel free to reach out to him. Jason, thank you so much for kicking off our Friday morning with us. I mean, your presentation was absolutely insightful, so thank you so much. Do you have any parting words to our attendees?
Pretty much, just, stay positive. Don't say I can't, say how can I? And then, there's a book called The Dip by Seth Godin that you may want to check out. And it's a book that outlines when to stick and when to quit. And sometimes during this time, sometimes it's just easier to get if there's no way for you to kind of turn the corner, you may want to try to get out as early as you can to reduce the amount of collateral damage so you can have enough capital to go try to do something else, right? And that's a rough decision, but pretty much, think if you start with, and don't say I can't, say how can I? And if you go through that how can I process and you don't really see a way, and sometimes that happens, then you have to have the courage to do something else. An entrepreneur is an entrepreneur, so we always find opportunity, right? So just trust yourself in that regard and things like that. But there's tons of resources out there. We provide coaching at the Chicago Urban League Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. We have some dynamic coaches. You can come, schedule an appointment with us. There's Women's Business Development Center out there. There's Sunshine Enterprises, Illinois Hispanic Chamber. There's so many organizations out there within the ecosystem that can provide you with the technical support and the expertise that you need to get through this whole process. So just know that not only ourselves at the Chicago Urban League, but the entire ecosystem is here for you, and we support you. And then you have the regional business centers that the city of Chicago just launched as well, the whole MBDC network. There's so many different resources out here for businesses. So just, stay encouraged and, get help. We're here, like not just Chicago Urban League, but the entire ecosystem.
Great. Thank you so much for mentioning all those partners. Absolutely. We are here to support Chicago's entrepreneurs. And just really quickly, your email address for people joining via phone, it is Johnson at shyul.org. And then on Facebook, you type in Jason William Johnson. I'm there. LinkedIn, Jason William Johnson. You can find me. And then Perfect. So once again, this webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the chat box one more time. Jason, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us this morning. It was extremely valuable, and we wish all of our attendees the best in their business endeavors. Thank you.
All right, everybody have a great day.
Yep. Thank you so much. Goodbye.